Greatly appreciated. Ladies, gentlemen, we're about to begin. Free AI tool for those that sit down first. Or maybe not. Good, thank you very much. If you could come and take your seat to be appreciated, thank you very much. Good. Incentives, yes. If you come in on time, we may end on time, and then we'll let you have the drinks reception afterwards. If you're all very slow coming in, we'll end late, and only Julian and I are allowed to have a glass of wine. Well, that got them sitting down. Good. Well, now let's move on to our next panel session, and we're going to look at the world of artificial intelligence. It's something that has been becoming more and more popular in terms of discussions, and certainly something that we cover on TradeWinds quite a lot as we move forward. It seems to have, the digitalization bubble moved from one thing to the other to another, and all of a sudden over the last 4 years, the world has gone absolutely crazy for artificial intelligence and various angles of it. So what I wanted to do is to have a panel where I can talk a little bit more concretely about what we mean about AI. We heard from Søren from Zero North about their plans to use agentic AI. So let's have a panel session where we're talking about how we're actually going to be applying that. So if I could ask my panel to come up. This isn't, they're not artificial, they are real, but they are definitely intelligent. If you could come up to the panel, please. Did you like that one? That's a nice joke. That was a joke, by the way. So here we got Jarden Gross from Orca AI, co-founder and CEO. He's promised not to reveal a secret I told him yesterday. Patrick DeSanti-Fettencoeur from BW Group, Cynthia Mark Mohan from Jurong Port, and Simona Toma, who's from Columbia Group. So welcome to the four of you. Now, you are the experts here in terms of applying AI into the shipping industry in one form or the other. So I really, and you could see this, we use the word hype, moving away from hype. You know, what is, I mean, it's, Jarden, come on, it's not hype anymore, is it? I mean, you've got to admit, when you started Orca AI and you started looking at how you're going to use AI in the shipping industry, did you feel that you've got to overcome all of the hype that had been going around with AI, given the fact that my LinkedIn posts, my LinkedIn feed is inundated with AI now? And there's even a phrase that became the word of the year last year, I think, in England, AI slop.
Yep.
Now, I know we're talking about consumer AI here, but is that giving a bad taste in the shipping industry for what AI is and making your job a little bit harder? Or have you managed, because I'm picking on you first because I've been aware of the Orca AI. You've got a very good budget for marketing, so I've become very good at understanding where you've gone with Orca AI and the journey that you've gone down. But has this AI slop somewhat sullied your waters a little bit and made it a bit difficult in selling your solutions into the shipping industry? Have we got over the hype and are we bored of it, or what?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. When we started the company, I think it was completely underhyped. So, you know, we went to Shipowners and we said, like, we want to power your vessels with AI, you know, to improve safety, operational efficiency. They looked at us like we're crazy. I think the main change that started happening in the industry started in 2023 as Starlink became available. Mm-hmm. And then they started connecting Starlink to the ships, and then you have a lot of bandwidth. And this what started to drive more adoption in the industry. customers became more receptive, and understood, okay, we have now the connectivity. The first driver was actually a cool welfare, but then they said, okay, how we can actually utilize it to improve operations. And then they started to be more receptive. What you see now, I think in AI in general, is overhyped in all industries, for sure consumer. Now with Claude and Claude Code, it goes into corporate. I think we didn't still, see the impact, and specifically generative AI or agentic AI, happening in commercial shipping. Soren talked about it in the last panel. I think yesterday I talked about it in a panel and asked me like what I'm going to see in the next 12 months. I think the impact that we're going to see with AI is mainly agentic AI, generative AI, impacting operations in shipping. And how it's going to happen? It's basically going to solve a problem that I'm constantly hearing from a lot of customers today. They say, we want to do more with less people. Okay. Basically, what they want to do, they want to create automation in many of the workflows and to be able to improve performance and to do it with less people and to be able to do it more accurate.
Can I go back to basics? What is agentic AI as opposed to AI or LLMs and large language models and all of that? What is agentic AI? It's this phrase that has turned up in the last year. So what is it?
Yeah, so it's basically a multi-language model that enables to do specific tasks that you're training him to do, like a person. So it started with, for example, Claude Code, which enables engineers to be able to do, to automate their writing codes to the certain point that today they don't even need to write the code itself, right? So they build agents, they train the agents, and they taught them how to write code without being even involved. So they can go to sleep, wake up in the morning, there is a bunch of line of codes, they already did unit testings on the code, they did QA, and they did the entire workflow from writing the code up to the production level. So this is agentic AI. It started from writing code, and now it goes to other type of operations, other workflows that we're starting to see.
Columbia Management is a ship manager. Orca AI has been working with ship management firms and shipping companies. There's a number of other companies that are doing this, offering solutions that will bring an ease of operation onto the ship. And Yarden just sort of implied there are sort of reducing the numbers and that. And that's become one of the fears around the application of AI in the shipping industry, is that we're going to take jobs away. We see it large scale in land-based industries, that people have said, oh, it's AI, it means I don't have a job anymore. And everybody comes up to me these days and go, oh, Craig, AI, you're going to lose your job soon as a journalist, aren't you? How are you going to be applying AI? Because I'm asking you specifically here because you are Chief of Maritime HR. So do you see AI as making your job easier or harder?
Definitely easier. Definitely.
How?
There is no doubt about it. And this is one of those technologies that for once I'm happy to see that we're not reactive to. Usually in shipping we're quite reactive, quite late into adopting a lot of new things. Usually we wait for regulation to come in place for us to start rolling out initiatives, right? This is the one where we immediately saw value out, and it's the one that we have started to embed it in our way of working. I think it has ability for having structural, fundamental change in the way you operate, both ashore as well as on vessels, right? And to a certain degree, it's much more easier to roll it out on ships, and you would know that because ships have an ability of generating tremendous amount of data. There is tremendous amount of machinery on board, and with a good infrastructure, which happened a few years back, now we're able to capture that data, clean the data, and have some good quality sense out of it, right? And this is where we use AI in multiple layers, in multiple tools. However, we use it as a tool. Okay. We use it as a tool to enable the human being. We use it as a tool to collect the data, clean the data, analyze it, make predictable patterns, and make recommendations. In our processes, the human takes the decision. But it takes an informed decision, and to reach to that level of informed decision is now a click of a button, whereby before was multiple hours of a superintendent collecting engine data, trying to put some sense into it. If he had any time, he would go back into the historical records for that engine or a piece of engine machinery, where now it's much more easy, much more accessible.
But can I ask you that, and because you mentioned there, usually within the industry, we'll wait for the regulations to determine what you're going to do. But now we've got AI, and in Colombia, you're able to step ahead of that. Now, I'm going to take your case where you've got a solution that basically applies for navigation. It can actually use Orca AI, you can use Orca AI, and you can get safe navigation. However, the regulations will put the liability down on the master and the crew.
Correct.
But you've just sort of implied that you can take AI and make decisions quicker.
We can take
how
AI.
do you balance that?
Yeah.
Because his system, well, I've seen his system. His system works. But I know that the liability will still fall on the master of that ship.
Correct.
Not on him.
Correct. So the way we use the tools is to gather the data, present the data to the human being. The human being the master in this case, takes the decision, and the human being analyzes the call reg. The human being reacts based on the call reg regulation. It's not the AI doing so in the Straits of Singapore or any other straits, right?
Yeah.
So we use it as an enabler, not as a decision maker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Patrick, tell me about your journey within BW Group then. Not so much with the digitalization. We talked about digitalization in the last panel session. We know that there's a lot of tools that have emerged over the last 10 years driving that digitalization. But in terms of using AI within your group, where have you started to see the best and most positive and even the most negative traction?
So, first of all, of course, we were also caught by the hype, and I pretty much love this hype because I was sitting in a panel discussion 2022 with a couple of regional CIOs, and it turned out that many management boards and exco level wanted to see AI coming into the company, and it was the first time that there's somebody ready to throw money at you, and the IT doesn't know what to do with it. So now, actually, we have embarked on this journey, and we see a lot of pockets where actually now AI can start to pick up, be it in weather routing or be it in optimization of certain workflows. Recently, we had an AI competition in our company. And it was actually incredible to see how...
Sorry, what sort of competition did you have? To create AI or to think of a solution where AI would be needed?
It was really about how employees outside of the company tools already use AI for certain work applications and how they solve the problems they face every day. So in crewing, for example, we saw a lot of examples where people just subscribe to an AI solution like Claude or like Copilot, and started basically to transform their own process. And it was amazing to see this. So there are a lot of pockets, actually, which are within the operational space. Now, this won't be enough because the investment in AI by the big Magic 7, I will pick one, is like, I think they've committed 500 billion in the next 3 years. They have 345 million users. It means this is $1,500 per user, which they will have to get in back. So this is for a company with 300 people, 500,000. So to get savings of 500,000, it's not enough to just have incremental process improvements here and there. You actually need really to look at how transformative can AI be in your company, and that's where agentic AI comes in, because agentic AI basically now starts to execute roles which you design. They become a separate user in your company, which then can accomplish a lot of tasks. So we embark on this journey as well, and so going from using AI to improve certain things, buying AI from the shelf solutions, vendors like Orca AI are there in the space to provide some solutions. So, and now we go into the space to basically reach the next level.
And the other flip of that question that I had was, have you identified anywhere where you thought, no, this isn't suitable for AI? Have you identified where AI shouldn't be used?
In shipping or in any industry, it's actually quite identical. You always have a barrier, which is regulation. I mean, you can deploy AI on the vessel, but you still will have to have the minimum mandatory manning requirements, which will mean that you won't go below that, disregard how nice you optimize the operations. So regulation compliance is one point, and the second point is also insurance. Like you said, where will the liability lie with? And that means that now insurance start to take the AI risk out and make it a separate policy, like, for example, cyber was the case. So we see here that there's going to be a refinement in the process down the road. And these roadblocks then will also be lifted, and then it will become actually more easy to deploy those solutions.
I heard in the other panel, Cynthia, that the port environment seemed to be one of those under-invested in terms of innovation, but that there's a lot of going on there. There's a lot of potential that's going to be arriving there. And I was quite impressed that you have actually got the head of digitalization, innovation, and data in your job title at Jurong Port. And you're not a container port, which is where you see all of this key efficiency with all the containers flying in and out of the terminals all the time. You're more of a bulk operating port, and I think livestock as well. I mean, tell me about where do you see this discussion when you're dealing with livestock flows and bulk? Somebody once described a bulk port as just a waiting place where you've just got a load of bulk. It's just a storage facility. Why do you need data and digitalization and AI in Jurong?
Thank you for that question, Craig. So very often we get mistaken that we are competitors to PSA. We are not. So we don't carry a single container in our port. And importantly, we're a gateway port. So what I mean by a gateway port, largely we are the entry into the first line of entry into Singapore to bring in raw materials that go into infrastructure development. So when you look at our business model, you take maritime out of the equation. It is not just about maritime. We are looking at serving the supply chain. So look at our cement silos, the Pan Uniteds, the Star Mix, the YTLs, as well as the steel consignees, and going into our HDB, which is one of our biggest customers as well. We need to improve our connectivity. Connectivity is key, and making sure that we are able to provide good service delivery out of it. So that's where we went into a digital transformation journey. Where and how can we operate as a multi-purpose port operator? Honestly, there is no digital standard that we can look at. We had to create our own, and we are still in the process of creating our own. Then it came about, okay, let's look at where is the capability that we need to build our future workforce. Honestly speaking, I'll be very, very honest about it. We don't see a future workforce expanding or scaling up in the line of multi-purpose port operations. The future generation might not even be invested in becoming a rigger. So how do we still continue to be in business and to continue being able to serve our customers to bring raw materials into the country? So it becomes a need for survival. And that's where we went into, okay, what are the capabilities that we want to build? Well, we are semi-automating our gate operations. We are fully automating our pass management operations as well. We are also looking at operational efficiencies within our lighterage ecosystem between the ship chandlers as well as our boat operators, so that we kind of build that connectivity space and hopefully build that trust, continue to build that trust that our customers have with us.
So what have you learned then in terms of what not to do?
It's a very good question. Firstly, we don't go into a problem saying that AI is the way. So we fall in love with a problem. We look at where the problem is. We look at dissecting the problem. And we learned not to jump into solution mode immediately. And with solutions also come risk. So we also learned that taking some level of risk sometimes needs to be done. So we do have a model that we build fast, we fail fast, and we recover fast. And that is something that we learned along the way. And what we learned also not to do was to try and think on behalf of the customer. So that's very important. So quite a number of our work involves small-scale trials with either direct customers or even partners or collaborators. And only after that, we go through a series of trials. It goes through a few success evaluations, then we go to live. Yeah.
Have you got customers that would have applied their own digitalization or AI solutions, and they come to Jurong Port and go, hey, we've got this, we need you to plug into this so that we can work more efficiently? And so how do you gauge how and when and who you agree to plug your systems into with somebody else? Because there's a certain amount of due diligence there, and I'm going to come on to the whole due diligence in a minute, but how do you go through that process from a port when you are so beholden on your customers staying truthful to you?
So far, we have not had too many customers approach us. It has always been the other way around. Because if you look at the nature of our customers, we are dealing with quite a large number of small, medium enterprises as well as the large groups. The large customers typically look at us and say, we need data integration. And we need to be able to integrate with your system. So we provision for APIs, EDI interfaces, flat files, and all those capabilities. But the smaller customers, which is pretty much about 75 to 80% of the base, they don't have avenue for digitalization. Some of them are still working not even on Excel. Right, so that's where we actually work with them to see, can we maybe extend our tools so that you can come on board our digital solutions instead? I mean, that's part of the service that we offer, and it's a slow process because there's, of course, the question about what are you trying to do? This whole idea, the whole notion of data trust. Can I trust you with my data? All these things are a work in progress. It's part of the change management that we are doing.
And how do you do that as well within BW Group? If you've got a large fleet and you've got a large number of customers and vendors selling you solution ideas as well, how do you, first of all, look at that integration in your value chain, but also, and increasingly, and Yarden, I'm going to come to this with you as well, you've got digital solutions now that really are trying to integrate with each other. There's this trend towards digital integration, so you'll have one solution doing one thing, another doing another thing, but you realize there's potential benefits if they can talk to each other as well, rather than having that human in the middle, if the two systems. So talk to me about that sort of that vertical integration between your customers and yourselves and that horizontal, how you've taken, what sort of approach maybe that you've taken to that?
So the integration across supply chain, this works very well. Whereas in the past years, integration has been very complicated to realize, now with API becoming actually a commodity, the integration between solutions are made very easy. Nonetheless, you can't really replicate work processes. You can replicate data or statuses, but you can't replicate work processes. So it's very important to have a process design perspective, where basically you look, where's your supply chain here playing a role, and then have the integration designed accordingly so that the process is not broken into pieces. So with our vendors, this works very well. With our customers, we actually have now also ecosystems. We use IMOS, and I think they are here in the room. They build ecosystems on their solutions where basically you bring different stakeholders together, and DNV is a data lake, is doing the same, has the same purpose. So by embarking on such platforms where basically you have ecosystems of supplier, customers, operators, owners, that makes the data flow very, very easy. So compared to 10 years ago, the industry has made a huge progress into that, and then we embark on this journey as well.
And from Colombia, I'll come to you again in a second, Yard, but from Colombia as well, the same sort of question there, because I know Colombia and some of your competitors, Valum and some of the other ship management, you've been very proactive in this digitalization space because you realize there's a lot of value that you can add to your clients, to the ship owners whose vessels you manage. But there's a lot of solutions, there's a lot of moving pieces there. So how have you been able to sort of integrate the solutions and make sure that it's not just a bit-by-bit approach and it becomes much more of a holistic digitalization process?
It's a very valid point. So quite a number of our partners, business partners, are coming forward with initiatives on how we can actually integrate the systems in such a way that is a very fluent flow of information from system to system. And I have to tell you that every single one of these requests is actually a project in its own. Right? It's not simple, it's not straightforward. Obviously, you have to look at data governance quite rigorously. You have to see whether this is a massive project, the investments that it takes, and so on and so forth. But there is will from both sides, because at the end of the day, both organization benefits if the information flow is quite fluid in between the entities. And yes, no two partners have the same system. So then there is a degree of complexity within the scope. So yeah, quite an interesting venue to tap into.
Does it work quite easily, though? Have you looked at it and just gone, no, this isn't going to work, we need to try a different approach?
It doesn't work quite easily, but it does with a certain degree of effort from both entities. Okay. Yeah.
And then, so back to you then, Yarden, with Orca AI, you put the solutions onto the ship, you can put your solutions into the office, there's the connectivity there. And I know that you've been working with other partners as well. How do you see this whole integration process? As we talk about increased autonomy within the shipping industry, as we look at where you want to take Orca AI, how do you see that integration and building that ability to communicate with other tools, AI tools at that, and to do that securely? And who would be the dominant partner in that relationship? Would it be Orca AI saying, my AI rules, not yours? Or how do you do it? You know, is there one big AI boss? Or are there, with lots of AI minions running around? Or is it, tell me.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out. No, but I think there are two types of integrations. One is the integration on the ship, which is more old school. You have standard protocols that you need to integrate with. Either you are able to read data, either you're passing commands. You have different levels of integrations there. Depends what you want to integrate, what type of data you want to read, what type of commands do you want to send. If you want to control the ship, it's a completely different thing. You need a standard. You need the class approval for that. So that's the integration on the ship, and I think that's key for your question. Like, if you want to be the one who is leading that, and you want to be able to enable automation and autonomous capabilities, similar to, for example, the autonomous cars that we're powering now in Japan that are being built, like the integration level there is much higher than what we have with our current product that is deployed on different ships. When you go and taking it back to the office, when you're taking it back to the cloud, the integration is completely different, right? It's all about APIs. It's all about sharing the data through the cloud. It's it's specific. You have like the best practices on how to do that, how to secure the data. We are not the only ones. Like, shipping is not the only industry that is doing that. It's actually in every commercial type of business, enterprise sales, and enterprise data sets. So I would say that this is like a different team, and I think there is the one who is going to lead that is the one who have access to the most data, and not just that. It's going to be able. The one who's going to lead that will be the one who has, as you said, the right workflows that the team already know how to use, and it's a part of their day-to-day business and the day-to-day ways of how to do business, and it's already removing either some of the workflow, either it's making them becoming more accurate, either they can do more things with less people. So once you have this type of moat, then you'll be able to integrate other solutions, and you'll be able to expand your offering with other AI capabilities.
Yeah. Good. I'm going to move on. Later this week in Marina Bay Sands, there's a Black Hat event where hackers are going to try and hack into a satellite system. And next week, there is going to be a maritime hacking village. A previous maritime hacking village, they hacked into an autopilot. They hacked into an autonomous vessel. You can see where I'm going with this, can't you?
Yeah.
The person that told me this actually said, Craig, I found a fault in a maritime startup platform, and I realized I could hack into a tanker and close a valve. I could bring that ship to a stop, just like that. And then I read somewhere else today that there are AI hacking tools, that AI is now being trained to hack. So let's talk about hacking warfare, shall we? How are you going to defend? Let's start with you, Patrick, because for everybody's sake here, I mean, let's just say a BW gas vessel, the last thing you want to be is have that risk. So tell me a little bit about how worried you are about the platforms that you use, the digital platforms you use, being a weak entry point to your systems, and how what steps you take to resolve that.
Let me change my hat first, so I leave my CIO hat or my head of IT hat for my CISO hat. So I'm also the CISO of BW Group, and that's definitely something which is a worry in the sense that you would have asked me this question 6 months ago. Coming from an engineering background, from an automation background, I would have said, actually, there's so much segregation, siloed system on board of a vessel, and how to monetize this for an attacker, it's very unlikely. And that's why, compared to the capitalization of the fleet on the water, compared to the number of events, cyber events which happen, it's very low compared to retail, compared to other industries. But now, with tools like Claude Midas, what will happen is that the remediation time collapsed completely. You don't have the time to analyze intrusion anymore. And vulnerability is going to be exploited in 0 time. So it means if you don't have automated response, then it's better to start it now and be early. Don't be late.
So the point I was given was, it's not necessarily that hackers are going in there to steal data. They're going in to disrupt a vessel, to actually create physical harm, and the risk there is on the seafarers.
The problem is that now, before you would need specific skill, engineering, know how to leverage on CAN-BOS, Profibus, or these automation languages, know the design of the vessels. This is now gone, so this is now available to anybody. The other thing is, what mitigates a little bit this doom day is that the cost of operating such system is still very high. So the Mythos bug, which has been found by, and which has been highlighted in some newspapers, the token cost is like close to $20,000. So before an attacker invests so much to disrupt your vessel, he will need to find a financial incentive. Okay. And that is still something which, I can disrupt your vessel if I'm a state actor, if I really want to have this as an objective. If I'm an attacker, try to leverage on money, before I invest 20,000 to disrupt your vessel, where's my payout, So that's still there, but this cost will come down, and then this threshold will also collapse slowly.
And Simona, it'd be reputational as well, wouldn't it?
There would be a few angles to this question, actually, that I would like to mention. And we spoke, a few minutes ago, we spoke about our head of AI, right? Because we've appointed a head of AI end of last year. And since end of last year till today, I can tell you there is a lot of efforts that have gone into creating a governance structure, a corporate governance structure into what do we use and what we don't. Because there is a lot of AI outside, right? And there is another element to it of going into efforts into actively training our manpower. What does it mean? What does it not mean? And what are the risks? Because there is tremendous amount of threats outside. And this training can't be at the center level. This training has to go throughout the whole organization, whether it's Philippines, Cyprus, whether it's the ships. Everybody needs to understand to a certain degree what are the threats associated with the technology. And there is a lot of work to be done in that spectrum.
Yeah. Yarden.
Yeah. First of all, I agree. I'm not sure that your friend is able to actually hack a ship.
Hey, he told me. I didn't do it myself.
It's pretty complicated to do. I'm not saying that it's not possible, and I'm not saying that as ships are becoming more connected and systems on board are becoming more connected, it's going to be easier. So I think there needs to be a little bit of a mind shift that is happening. First of all, I'm happy to hear that you're also the CIO, CISO in your company, because I think there needs to be this position where you have in a lot of corporates, you have a CISO function is basically overruling the entire cyber policy in the company. Now, if you're talking about the cloud, you have solutions for cloud security and how to protect it, and they have the best practices. And I'm coming from a country that, basically producing the best, cyber solutions in the world. When it goes to the ship, it's very specific, right? So, and I think very similar to how you have Gartner for cloud security, and they're coming with new categories all the time, and they're saying what needs to protect and how it needs to protect and what are the right tools to protect it. Similar here for the ship, for the OT, for the systems on board. As we're going through this transition, there needs to be standard in the industry that comes and actually creating the best practices on how to control and how to make sure that the ship is not hackable. So it needs to come from classification societies, it needs to come from the regulations, and they need to set the standard for the ship owners and shipping companies to be able to do that in an easier way.
I would like to add, while there is a hype for AI, there is not really a hype for AI security yet.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to this, actually. So please, if you call for AI in your company, please also include the security part of the story.
We're going to run out of seconds, basically. Cynthia, and maybe if I've got time, I'll go to the other panels here. What is your dream next AI tool? Have you identified something that you want to go and look for, an AI solution that you think that Jurong needs?
So we don't look AI as a tool. So the way we look at AI is it's going to be a super hyper, a human on steroid that's going to be our colleague.
A human on steroids?
Yeah, who's going to be our colleague, right? So that's basically what we want to create,
Yeah.
Because we don't have that in our port operations, especially with multi-purpose port operations. So we are gearing towards building that one up.
And Simona, in Colombia, is there a core sort of problem that you think, oh yes, there must be an AI solution for that?
I would tell you I do have the next project in mind, have already put it across, and it's definitely to do with my division. It's within the maritime HR spectrum. While there is tool available to help us out, we deal with a lot of data privacy. We deal a lot with human data, which obviously you need a very good governance structure around it. And yes, I do have a team of legal colleagues who are telling me what we can do and what we can't. So that would be the next project on the line, and definitely looking forward to see how we can make it happen, because it can work. Yeah, we just need to understand the legislation around it. Yeah.
Good. The four of you, thank you very much. Not artificial, but definitely intelligent. Thank you very much. We say a big thank you to my panel. Thank you. Good, thank you. And I'll now hand back over to another person who is intelligent and definitely not artificial, Julian Bray. Thank you.
Thanks. Cheers, great job. Thanks. I guess he'll be asking for a pay rise next, which I guess you can't get AI to do. Now, slight change in tone now. It's my great pleasure to introduce someone I've known for many years for a presentation from Vasilos Christalis, the Executive Vice President of Business Development and the Chief Commercial Officer of ABS, who's going to speak to a paper on From Rhetoric to Reality, what capital decisions tell us about shipping's future. Vasilis.
Thank you, Julian. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time today. So let me start with a simple observation, which is the way capital is being deployed in shipping tells a different story from the one our industry often tells about itself. If you look carefully at what kinds of ships are being ordered, how they are designed, and crucially, what is not being ordered, you see a different picture emerging. Our language is still cyclical. We talk about tightness and oversupply. We ask whether rates will hold and when markets will normalize. But recent investment behavior tells a different story. It suggests shipping has accepted a fundamental change and adapted pragmatically. I want to look at what that behavior tells us about the direction of our industry and why it deserves to be understood as strategic adaptation. Look at ordering activity, which remained strong through 2025 after the heights of 2024. Container ship contracting alone reached roughly 600 vessels in 2025, one of the highest years on record. Across all segments, investment did not retreat. But when you looked at what was ordered in recent years, a clear pattern emerges. By the end of 2025, around half of all new building tonnage on order was alternative fuel capable. And the global alternative fuel order book had just grown to just under 2,000 vessels. These are not speculative bets. They are, almost without exemption, risk-managed assets. Owners have largely favored dual fuel over single fuel, fuel-ready over fuel-locked, and layered efficiency over dependency on any one technology pathway. In other words, they are paying for optionality. And in shipping, optionality is not just a financial choice. It is also an operational and safety choice. It reduces the risk of locking fleets into technologies that may outpace fuel availability, infrastructure readiness, crew competency, or the maturity of global standards. At the same time, recent ordering has shown just how sensitive capital has become to regulatory timing. Over the past year, contracting has moved back toward conventional heavy fuel oil-based designs. Not because the industry is changing direction, but because it is becoming more decisive about when fuel choices should be locked in. As of April 2026, around 44% of the global order book is alternative fuel capable, down from 52% a year earlier, with a pullback most evident in container ordering. Many of these heavy fuel oil vessels are being ordered with the expectation that carbon intensity will be managed through efficiency and biofuels, even as supply constraints remain real. The broader signal is ambiguous. Capital is separating long-term emissions reductions from near-term asset commitment, preserving flexibility until policy, fuel supply, and commercial incentives become clearer. In an environment where certainty keeps shifting, that is not hesitation. It is a disciplined risk allocation. Investment is not longer about peak performance in perfect conditions. Boards are now asking a harder question. Which assets remain viable, resilient, and safe across various possible future regulatory, financial, and trade conditions? And that shift explains much of what we see in fuel choice, technology adoption, and vessel design. Fuel choice is the clearest expression of it. Most alternative fuel-capable vessels on order are, of course, LNG ready, with methanol emerging as a secondary pathway, and other fuels remaining option value. Why? Capital is being allocated to configurations that limit downside from regulatory and fuel uncertainty, while preserving the ability to adapt as assumptions change. LNG offers infrastructure now. Methanol offers promise but limited reach today. Ammonia may play an important role in the future, but significant safety, supply, and operational questions remain unresolved. Geopolitical uncertainty, regulatory timelines, infrastructure built out, and fuel availability do not justify narrow bets at fleet scale. The rational response is to keep multiple pathways open. This is why we see a renewed emphasis on heavy fuel oil now. While fuel debates dominate headlines, possibly the most consequential capital deployment of the last 2 years has gone into energy efficiency. The introduction of the carbon intensity indicator made something very clear very quickly. Ratings now affect commercial outcomes. In response, owners did not wait for perfect fuel clarity. They acted. Hull and propeller optimization became a standard. Waste heat recovery gained scale on large vessels. Air lubrication systems were designed into new buildings. Digital performance platforms were deployed fleet-wide. These investments share 3 important characteristics. They deliver results immediately. They work regardless of fuel. And they improve compliance under almost every scenario. They also reduce operational stress on vessels, systems, and crews, directly supporting safer operations alongside better performance. Efficiency is not longer a secondary layer. It is the industry's North Star in an uncertain world. The same logic appears in vessel size dimensions. By the end of 2025, the global container ship order book stood at roughly 8 to 8.5 million TEU, a historic figure. But again, composition tells the real story. Ordering growth has concentrated in the 8,000 to 14,000 TEU range, alongside strong growth in feeder and sub-Panamax segments. Ultra-large container vessel ordering has remained comparatively measured. This reflects subtle but important recalibration. Very large ships maximize efficiency in stable environments. Medium-sized ships maximize flexibility when conditions fragment. Neither is inherently better, but the industry is not longer assuming stability as the default. It is pricing flexibility explicitly. In the middle of all this, we find ourselves operating in what can fairly be described as a geopolitical enigma. Not because disruption exists, shipping has always operated with tension in the background, but because the persistence and interaction of multiple stresses have become harder to predict. Route reliability has deteriorated. Capacity transiting Suez is materially lower, while arrivals around Cape of Good Hope surged by nearly 90%. That is not marginal adjustment. It is a structural rerouting. As this has mechanical consequences, UNCTAD estimates global ton-mile demand rose around 3%, with container ship demand up roughly 12%, purely due to rerouting. This helps explain why markets can appear tight even when order books look heavy. What differentiates this period from previous disruption is carbon pricing, because distance now has a financial signature. For a 20,000 to 24,000 TEU vessel, on the Far East to Europe trade. Rerouting alone can add $400,000 per voyage in EU ETS cost. 400,000. That figure concentrates minds. Routes are not longer neutral operation choices. They carry regulatory and financial exposure. The rules of the system have changed. And the investment behavior you see, especially around efficiency and optionality, reflects that awareness. At the same time, regulatory frameworks have reduced operational slack. EU ETS coverage is expanding. CII ratings tighten year by year. The system has become less forgiving, even as conditions have become more volatile. This industry's response has been adaptation. One final point. Rerouting absorbs capacity. Efficiency initiatives can reduce speed, and regulation penalizes distance. History reminds us to be careful here. Past disruptions produced short-term scarcity signals that led to overordering, followed by prolonged overcapacity, of course. The challenge for the industry now is to distinguish between genuine demand and disruption-induced absorption as a strategic necessity. It was the Greek philosopher Epictetus who said, "We cannot control events that happen around us, but we can control our reactions to them." Shipping cannot control geopolitics, fragmenting regulation, or the pace of fuel availability. What it can control is how intelligently it allocates capital in response. The evidence is already clear. The industry is not longer betting on just a fuel. It is investing in optionality, efficiency, and resilience so that assets remain compliant, competitive, and safe across a wide range of outcomes. That is not a bet on the future. It is preparation for it. And in the current environment, that may well be the safest strategy available. I thank you for your time.
Vasilis, thank you very much indeed, and some very interesting comments there, and perfectly rounded off with a quote from Greek philosophy. Excellent. I would have thought nothing less, to be honest with you. Now, we're just entering the final part of our session, and this session is digging a little deeper into how shipping evolves, how the industry evolves with the uncertainties around us. And I'm delighted that we're joined by another one of Singapore's leading figures, not only from the Singapore cluster, but from the global maritime community. May I welcome to stage Laura Batterjan, the head of commercial operations at Rio Tinto. Laura. Please grab a strange dumpy seat. Yes, they're sort of comfortable, but not entirely. Quite right in some ways. Laura, very warm welcome to you for this final leadership spotlight for 10 or 15 minutes or so. Great pleasure. I see you're a chemical engineer by training before you came into this very varied career in Rio. Had some significant responsibilities there. And now, of course, you oversee the marine logistics and commercial services across such a complex supply chain. And you've got more than 25 years of experience of seeing these elements develop. So I'm sure you're you have a very sharp eye on the realities and what the myths are that perhaps being peddled around here. I'd like to kick off picking up on some of the themes we were talking about earlier in the day about the pressures on companies with in the need to build resilience into the global supply chain. Your company, one of the world's biggest mining companies, as I say, the world's biggest Cape-sized charterer, I think, statistically, or certainly one of the world's biggest charterer. Where there is so much distribution, political, logistical, environmental, resilience really has to be a priority. But what does that mean in practice for you? And how do you go about balancing that with diversification, partnerships, and visibility?
Yeah, thanks, Julian, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. I think what we've seen definitely today in the world is that volatility and complexity is becoming a structural feature and not only episodic, and we have to basically bake most of this new environment in the way we do business, and resilience is definitely one part of it. I think the resilience aspect the way we approach resilience, once this is very simple, to define, probably quite difficult to implement in practice. But for us, what it means is keeping operating safely and reliably while navigating evolving and under pressure environment. So that said, it's never basically a one solely initiative that we have to basically look at, but essentially identifying what are the critical elements that will deliver in practice that resilience that we need to factor in. The key part is for us is the consistency to begin with. So that sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but when there is quite a lot of volatility and so on, I think this is very important for us that we keep with our North Stars and that we do not deviate, from them. And for us, definitely a key North Star is basically safety in our operating environment, and in shipping, definitely safety at sea. Then is also, having very clear and consistent expectation from our partners, not only on safety, but also in basically performance that we are after. So that's number one, underlying, our approach to resiliency. The second one is partnerships. We need to basically rely on these partnerships, fully align on actually this consistency on North Star to basically ensure, that we have a sustainable approach with them, not just for navigating complexity today, but also being still around, in the future as we're developing a long-term solution with them and developing that trust that is basically necessary to actually navigate that complexity. And that trust is really a two-way street as well. They need as much trust, from the charterers, then we need trust, as well from the ship owners in basically navigating that part.
I was going to ask you about this, your DDO program, your designated owners and operators, DOO, sorry.
Yes.
Designated owners and operators program. What do you expect from them? What do you demand of them? And what do they expect from you in return?
Absolutely. So this designated owner and operator program has been launched in 2023. And the initial North Star, actually, the North Star for that program is actually to uplift safety at sea and crew welfare. So basically through the adoption and implementation of dry BMS as a safety management system for in our shipping industry, we are basically working with them to continue to uplift safety maturity. Not because it's the right thing to do, and because it's an imperative. I don't know if you've seen the latest statistics in fatalities in shipping. Last year, there was 240 fatalities at sea last year, 42 in dry bulk shipping, which basically represent a lost life of a seafarer every 1.5 days in shipping and every 8.5 days in the dry bulk sector, which is totally unacceptable.
Not just an injury, this is loss of life.
Lost lives. I'm not talking about serious injuries. For that, you need to add another 100, basically, events, reported event. We know, the reporting is not always very accurate, unfortunately, still on that end. So this is basically the underpinning North Star for that designated owner and operator program, and we basically are defining, who we want to work with, and with basically partners that are basically committing to improve safety at sea and crew welfare with very specific jointly defined targets to basically, in return, do business with Rio Tinto and having access to our chartered volume.
Is it unfair to criticize the business in a way that, why should it fall to yourselves, a major charterer, to be basically trying to ensure people providing an open market service live up to what are, frankly, pretty basic standards? Shouldn't the business have stronger basic standards itself?
So that's what you would expect, but in the end, at some point, if you really want to move the dial, you basically have to embrace the opportunities that are sitting ahead of us and accepting in a way that, particularly in the dry bulk sector, this is a very fragmented sector in terms of ship owners and operators, as well as in terms of charterers. So unlike the tankers industry, which to me, I'm just 4 years in shipping, I looked at actually how they've been embracing the problem of basically sustainable shipping and responsible shipping towards not only safety but also environmental impacts. They are basically leveraging the fact that there is a consolidated chartering, in a way, community to basically progress. We don't have that ecosystem in the dry bulk sector. That said, we are basically want to be, again, as a dry bulk leader in volume in the industry, to be able to actually promote that visions that we have, which we have actually demonstrated possible with our own vessels and basically uplifting the safety maturity over the past 15, 20 years on board for our own vessels, to basically demonstrate that it was not just mining or metal standards and that were not applicable to shipping, which basically are demonstrating and embracing, working with the shipping managers as well to actually adopt also dry BMS. We're not here imposing a mining safety standard. It doesn't make sense in full in shipping. So that's why we've been very much listening to what the industry was proposing, but then sticking with one standard and work with them to implement them.
Moving this out into the working in the commercial world and bearing in mind the pressures on trade flows and the challenges with geopolitics, we've seen in other sectors, other dry bulk sectors, frankly, some charterers moving the goalposts a little to allow them to now charter older ships, certainly, not necessarily bad ships, but certainly older ships because of the pressure of capacity, the lack of investment historically. Yeah. Is that a pressure that you have faced, and do you feel there is a strong enough commercial core to be able to support your ongoing charter needs in the coming years?
Yeah, look, definitely. I mean, it's. I think the previous conversation was basically relating about this difficult availability of ships, new ships, also particularly in the dry bulk sector. And the way we think about that is not necessarily actually being. Just looking at vessels from its age. Yes, age has an influence, but for us, what we found out is actually the way the ship is maintained is the most important thing. So you can have basically a poorly maintained ship 10 years old, and then basically a very well-maintained ship 15, 18 years old, that basically I will prefer to hire instead of the first one. So we've been basically in our ship selections, in basically working as well with our designated owner. For us, safety is leading to operational excellence, which is basically also a proxy to productivity and value creation. So there is, it's an investment with return in basically uplifting safety. And that leads to that basically better operational excellence, which basically, irrespective of the age of the vessel, can basically be a compelling value proposition for charterers, which in basically taking their vessels.
You're not directly affected with what's going on in the Middle East right now, apart from some of those some of those ramifications, just as the bunker price, such as crew availability and other issues. But looking at the implications of geopolitics on trade flows, for instance, there were the tensions with China about the buying of iron ore and ware and the pricing of that. That isn't to the point of this conversation. But how are you able to manage an efficient and resilient freight operation where there are those tensions? What are the greatest pressure points you find yourself facing?
Yeah, look, as I mentioned at the beginning, volatility is basically part of the new norm. Is the constant. What we have to
keeps everyone on their toes, I suppose.
Operate. Yes, the only constant is change, as we say in our team. So we basically have to be ready to have created basically resilience and where it makes sense. So for us, it's basically creating redundancies, resilience, and capabilities. It doesn't make any sense because that's across the value chain. It's not economically viable. So it's very targeted where we need to basically be. It's also basically strengthening our digital capabilities and investing in digital tools so then we can have a better access to data and be far more, decision-driven based on data and having to take decision without also knowing everything. So that's also the discomfort, but that we have to learn to do.
I assume Rio is using AI in many of its big picture, but just on the previous conversation, are there any maritime applications of AI that you're particularly interested in, that you're using?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first, actually, we started with safety. So on board our own vessels, we have cameras on board, and we basically used AI to basically support safety reports from basically the images that basically were analyzed through AI and support the masters in basically having meaningful conversation about what the seafarers were doing very well, but also, where, they were putting themselves at risk, and then basically with a further, leadership in the field support. That is the core of also our master coaching program as part of the designated owner and operator program. So that's one application. We obviously also use it for other matters, whether they are basically trade-related, operationally related, or else.
When you lay awake at night, are these issues going around your mind about where AI is going to take the business in other areas?
Look, obviously, we basically think about, how it can be a tool and a solution to a certain problem. It's not necessarily the solution for everything. We're quite clear about that part. But that's part of the disruptions, in basically the environment that we are living in, that we have to embrace and basically look to see how we can take it to our advantages. And again, in supporting some of our North Stars that I mentioned earlier, in basically being consistent to achieving our goals.
You obviously don't own the ships, but you control the demand for the ships, which is absolutely critical. In terms of decarbonisation, how much of a priority is that for you to be when you're thinking of the future demand offer that you can offer the market?
Look, we also, so that's part of also these ambitions. We do not deviate or slow down on our ambitions towards reducing our carbon intensity emission by 50% by 2030. So we are en route to that part, having delivered.
It's pretty ambitious.
It is, absolutely. So it's not necessarily an easy task, but
I see you just ordered a couple new
so we'll definitely expanding the optionality in basically fuels. We have in the portfolio some dual fuel LNG vessels, a bit more than 12 now, and we just ordered basically two dual fuel methanol Newcastle Maxes that will be available and delivered to us starting 2028 as basically an optionality to what the future may be. We remain fuel agnostic. We're very clear with that part. But again, taking the opportunity for continuing to shape the portfolio, and that future readiness is important for us.
Indeed. Laura, just a final question to wrap up, a bit of futurology perhaps. thinking 10 years ahead, 2036 it'll be, can you see the role of Rio, the major charterer, its position having changed significantly in that time? What avenues do you feel there may be faster change than we're currently sort of comfortable with and thinking of?
Yeah, so look, I think there are couple of things that will not change, and hopefully, will in terms of priorities. So for us, safety is definitely there, and our targets, and I would love to see basically in 10 years' time, 0 fatalities. So not having to basically share 240 fatalities in 2036, but 0 will be definitely a great success for the industry as a collective. That's one part. I think, on the decarbonization front as well, basically having progressed, what we've been working very heavily is definitely working towards the energy efficiency approaches, so technologies, not just the devices, but also vessel optimization, vessel sizes, and so on. So we're also counting on basically our new trade route, basically ex-West Africa and Guinea, with very large ore carriers to basically be able not only to bring basically new product to market, which will be a change from today in Rio's portfolio, and nearly doubling as we speak, the export.
Already changing the market, in fact.
For Guinea. So basically, but done basically with thoughtful process as we are starting basically this new route in terms of what efficient vessels, what safe vessels as well will mean for us, and hopefully we can talk about that in 10 years' time. We were expecting as well that there will be also more progress on market-based measure, which are basically clear framework that the industry needs to basically trigger investments in future fuel availability, and basically having also the development of the infrastructure, safety at ports, and so on and so forth, to be able to basically use more of them.
Laura, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Some very interesting comments there. If you'd like to give your appreciation to Laura. Thanks indeed again. Thank you, everybody. And on that note, could I invite the panelists for the final session up to the stage, please? Thank you. It's a great pleasure to introduce Samatas Astanas, Chairman and CEO of Synergy Maritime, Milena Papas, Commercial Director of Starbulk. Samatas, pleasure to meet you. Martin Frøgaard of, where are we, Martin? CEO of Pacific Basin. Jeremy Sutton, CEO of Swire Shipping, and Ho-Weng Yu, very good, MD and CEO of Pacific Carriers, and also, most importantly, Chairman of the Society Maritime Foundation as well. Ladies and gentlemen, many thanks indeed for making the time to come along. I must say, I love this venue. This is the second time we've used it now, and even though it's raining, to have a view in a conference room is something really rather special, and the flavour is excellent. Panelists, this theme is disruption, threat or opportunity, I think is the easy way of summing it up. It may seem a little banal, but that, I guess, is what shipping is all over, really. And we were hearing earlier in the day of the operational challenges and threats from geopolitical issues that are everywhere today and have been coming for the last 6 years in dramatic fashion, but also, frankly, the commercial success that has brought to many companies as well. The strength of balance sheets, most companies are in a very strong position. So perhaps looking at that one, disruption, is this a structural shift or just another cycle? And if it's just another cycle, is it, as some people are beginning to wonder, are we getting near the top? We heard reference earlier to in the broader financial market, people talking about the world coming towards the peak of the current credit cycle, for instance. whether that has implications for shipping, well, it would have shipping implications. So Martis, could I start with you? Shipping is clearly a cyclical business, but there's something feels different today. Do you think it is, and if so, what, and how should you, and how should the world be reacting to it?
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for having us here. It is indeed a lot of different than the previous cycles we've seen, because this time it's too many things going on, and on a cumulative basis, I think that the world has become kind of fed up in a way that all this uncertainty and all this volatility is getting under our skin, to put it this way. But as far as shipping is concerned, and especially dry bulk, we're kind of used to that. I mean, our companies were operating when the rates were negative, not too many years ago, and when iron ore was at $30 a ton and things like that. Right now, it's still different, but in our opinion, the volatility, uncertainty, and all this geopolitical havoc, it represents a lifetime opportunity. And we have seen that in other sectors. We have seen that in containers the last few years and tankers. And we believe that in dry bulk, we will see this opportunity very soon in a number of ways. So it's an opportunity for us.
Martin, could I turn to you? You've seen multiple cycles across, frankly, virtually every area of the business, from your time today through ultra gas, through Maersk, even running drilling rigs, as well as tankers and bulk, et cetera, et cetera. Are we at risk of overestimating how things are changing, how things have changed? Is this more a period of chaos and uncertainty than something truly structural?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't. This has always been like that. We always had these the cyclicality of our business and the short-term volatilities and all the disruptors. So I do admit that it feels like there's a little bit more than usually, especially for Pacific Basin, sitting in Hong Kong for a while, feeling the tariff discussions we also had last year and so on. So there is a feel, but I think, as we all have been saying, it of course again has a benefit for shipping that we have the volatility, and I think for any of the companies involved in our business, it's all about taking advantage of the short-term disruption that happens, and that's what we are very good at. And then, of course, looking for the long-term, just keep focusing on the longer-term part of it. And so I do feel there's much more going on at the moment. I also do actually feel the situation in the Arabian Gulf has a potential to become a little bit bad going forward for us. But on the other hand, right now, it actually looks quite positive.
We've mentioned this word resilience probably 100 times today. It's, again, something of a cliche perhaps, but is that actually one of the issues that does embody so much of the shipping industry?
Yeah, I think so, actually. No, I think that's very correct. Yeah.
Jeremy, from a liner and regional trades perspective, is this sort of churning of black swan and disruption, do you feel that's something that's now embedded and changing the way you and your partners are looking at the market? Or is this just an extension of ongoing business life in shipping?
Well, I think at a regional level, a local level, we're certainly not immune from the global fundamentals that are driving container shipping in this case. We heard earlier today in a number of forums today the reluctance to try and categorise what is precedented or unprecedented these days. So I'd be reluctant to try and kind of label what we're seeing now in the container side. Is it really any different than the past? But the one thing that is different, of course, is this notion of kind of rules-based criteria has changed, and so where the industry and us as businesses have probably become accustomed to dealing with economic issues and natural disasters and new technologies and so forth, clearly the game has changed. And we find ourselves now front and centre in political circles and find themselves front and centre in environments where things have changed as well. And that part, Julian, I think has changed as an industry.
Milena, could I bring you in here? Obviously, Star Bulk has been front and centre as obviously the biggest listed dry bulk company, public listed dry bulk company, but hugely active in the S&P and the M&A business over the last couple of years. From that perspective, are you seeing these shifts actually change the way that you can go about running the business internally and assessing future opportunities for you?
So what are you asking me exactly? First of all, thanks for having me. So what is exactly the question?
Has this disruption changed the way that you are having to look at the market and address the market?
Well, I think, first of all, going back to your question about structural versus and how permanent these changes and this new reality is, I think that due to the geopolitical turmoil going on, we're seeing a lot of fragmentation of globalization. So there's a lot of protectionism now going on because of the sanctions, because of the wars, because of the energy transition as well. So yes, we have to look at these as a new constant. It's like especially post-COVID, where we saw a big change, and we saw from just in time to just in case, inventories started going up. And 6 years ago, a great example of that is China, which had 90 million inventory of coal, and now they have 600 million. So we're seeing that there is opportunity. For us in Starbucks, what we do is we look at supply and demand fundamentals. We look at the market, but what has changed internally is the fact that we are much more reliant upon our different departments like legal, crew, MSQ, operations. So we rely on the expertise of each of these departments and peoples, so therefore we give them more initiative, more authority, but at the same time we come together in Zoom calls, WhatsApp groups, we talk to each other all the time because we need to update on situations. You have Strait of Hormuz, you have bunker prices going up. Last Friday only, bunker prices went up and down just with 2 different tweets. So there is a sense of urgency, and I think that this is, you know, every time that there is, every 100 years or so, we see a difference in our world. And I think that this is what we are seeing. And this is a new reality, moving a little bit perhaps away from globalization and going into more protectionism, like I mentioned before, and countries looking to be energy and food secure. So, I mean, we continue and we look at the supply-demand fundamentals, but we do take a minute to assess, to look at the geopolitical situation, and then take decisions that hopefully can endure the next cycle.
I think this question of volatility in all financial markets is increasingly an issue. And in fact, sometimes when I'm reading the general press and people are getting excited about even oil market volatility, I wonder whether they've actually looked at freight market volatility in any way because of the violent swings there. Ho-Weng Yu, could I bring you in? We've got sanctions and rerouting and regionalization. Almost trade shifts are almost changing in almost real time. From your vantage point, is that creating inefficiency in the system? And if so, what are the opportunities that you could possibly gain from such inefficiencies?
Yeah, well, Julian, the first starting point for me is perhaps trying to separate what is cyclical and what is structural. Because otherwise, I'm afraid we might risk misdiagnosing the situation. So firstly, to me, there's a cyclical area, a layer. Oil price at $100, Cape rerouting, war premium. That will probably go away when the conflict ends. We have seen that before. But to me, there are at least two potentially layers that could be structurally irreversible. One is the assumption that maritime choke points is reliably open is probably broken, right? So passage like Hormuz or maybe others going forward, to me, will probably command a premium, a geopolitical premium. And secondly, trade flows are no longer about efficiency, economic efficiency to be specific. I think it's increasingly influenced by corridor politics, if I could say, right? So to answer your question, first question, to me, this is not another cycle. I think the risk is if you assume that when the ceasefire comes, when the conflict ends, things will normalize. I don't think so. I think the cyclical layer will normalize, but the structural layer will probably stay. Inefficiency, well, certainly it creates inefficiency. Longer trade routes, higher cost, fragmentation. If I could break this down to perhaps 3 groups, I think in the immediate term, I definitely see many of the traders are definitely benefited. They have superior information, flexibility, they can up dislocation. I see integrated players, like many of my charters, they sit across the chain. So they have upstream, they have refining, they have trading. So I think they could possibly capture more durable value. But for ship owners, I think that's interesting. I think it varies. It depends on a lot of factors. For us in the PCL, we have exposure across dry bulk and wet trades. So we kind of see a broad perspective. In the bulk segment, for example, we see our cargoes rotating between break bulk cargoes, project cargo, steel, and commodities. And we have certain flexibility to kind of move that around. We see steel slabs that used to come from the Middle East to Southeast Asia, now coming from China. We see replacement of crude oil during this crisis by the demand for coal. Maybe short term, but I think there's probably a little bit more structure to that, and that definitely benefit Kamsarmaxes, for example. So I think to your question, is this transient or is it structural? I see both. Is there risk and is there opportunity and who is benefiting? It depends on, what player you are in and where you are sitting. I think to a large extent, it all depends on how you're organized. I think if the organization is kind of rigid, then it becomes a real risk. But you have the nimbleness and agility to move, that I think you're probably better positioned to be, capturing the opportunities that come.
Stamatis, could I ask you, in dry bulk particularly, has volatility been more of a tailwind or a complication?
Well, it's always a tailwind. I mean, volatility for us, if you know how to play the cycle, it's always a tailwind. I mean, it creates short-term disruptions, but for example, the effects of what's going on right now are not yet visible. For example, as I was having a discussion yesterday, the net loss per day right now from the crisis is about 10 million barrels. And that's a significant amount because every month that's about 300 million barrels of oil lost from the system. Every quarter, that's almost 1 billion barrels. That means replacement. It's not visible yet because the world is still eating out of the strategic reserves that are getting released. However, there's only up to a point where you can continue doing that. So we will inevitably switch back to coal very soon. And certain countries, especially here in the Far East, have been planning accordingly. Like Milena said, I mean, the strategic inventories of China and coal have gone up like 6 times. And many other countries are planning that way for the summer. So it's kind of inevitable that this kind of volatility right now, especially in the Middle East, is going to drive up volumes in dry bulk considerably. So the minute that you can see, not like tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow, which is not too far away, that's how you play the cycle and that's how you become successful in what you do.
Milena, do you think the view of financial markets that this will all calm down when the war is over is a little more optimistic than is realistic?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, where do we begin anymore? I think that people are so used to so many changes all the time, especially with the new US president a year ago. So that, they're ready to react, that they're ready to take decisions that may last longer because they're defensive decisions. Of course, like Samad says, this provides opportunities. First of all, I don't think that the Strait of Hormuz is going to end as smoothly in the moment. But it already has affected our markets. We see fertilizers, for example, which are not being exported. So now that they're going to have a problem with what types of grains they're going to be, farmers are going to be investing in. And So, you see a lot of those substitutions, and these things will be affected a lot. We saw the very violent, I would say, and volatile increase in bunker prices, which in turn, like Stamats again said, will go to increase coal, which is a positive for us. We see vessels being, dry bulk not as much, it's only 3-4% of our volumes, but we see that vessels are detained, and that affects the tanker market more so. All of these things lead up to being opportunities. Bunker prices going up means that vessels that are eco or have scrubbers gain. So there's a two-tier market, which started, and we expected it would be because of the IMO, but ended up being because of Strait of Hormuz. So, I mean, I'm just waiting to see what's next, what's going to be the next black swan. So if the war even ends and we're lucky in that sense, there's going to be a next thing, especially with Mr. Trump there.
Could I ask you all, as we move forward, for your views on the question of fresh assets, fleet strategy? Clearly, we have this situation where parts of the fleet are very old, parts of the fleet are clearly overbuilt. New ships are expensive, as are second-hand ships. Earnings can be very strong, but you've got to find someone who wants to sell to you, frankly. Ho-Weng Yu, what is your approach to your fleet renewal? And what are the pressures from this higher-priced, almost inflationary world we are now living in within the shipping markets?
Yeah, I think the first starting point is that we look at our fleet and see what we can best do it. I mean, make sure we maintain the ship well, we install energy-saving device, we reduce every drop of
efficiency
use of, absolutely, yeah. So we have gone through the whole gamut of installing, all sort of energy-saving device, including shaft generators and everything. The ships that we have recently brought into our system are, whether it's the tankers, the MRs, or whether it is the bulkers, they are built to, at this point in time, I think to me, the best lines, the most efficient that they are on the water. I think there will be a continuous improvement along the way. So efficiency is extremely important. I think we should, do the maximum that we can. Now, in terms of fleet renewal, frankly, it's a very tough question, Julian. I mean, if I look at asset prices, whether they're in bulk, Kamsarmax, Ultramax, Handy, they are so toppish. It's right at the top of the prices if I look at the last 15, 20 years. If I look at tankers, very much the same picture. Almost up to the 90% kind of quartile, super high. Frankly, we are quite conservative. I would not necessarily plunge immediately into this, so I'll utilize as many of my ships as possible. If I do need, I'll charter in. Is this going to be sustainable, the high prices? I'm not sure, but probably if we have a little bit of patience and if we have a strong balance sheet, I think we can wait out a little bit because, as you all know, right, everything at the top do not necessarily stay for top forever. So there'll be some point in time we think that whether it's new building or second-hand prices, that will come off. Let's see, I mean, the world today is so changed and so dynamic and so volatile. It's a bit difficult to make 15, 20-year-old decisions. So we can't keep it a little bit more in chunks, look at next 1 year, next 3 years, next 5 years, and they kind of go along the way. Having been in shipping for perhaps over 3 decades, I think there'll be opportunity, Julian, for owners to go and buy ships, but to me, probably not now.
There will always be opportunities, I'm sure. Jeremy, in some of the niche trades that you're in, what is your fleet replacement strategy, and have you reviewed that based on these sort of inflationary pressures we're seeing across the industry?
I mean, my comments are very much the same as Weng Yu. I think something has to give. I'm told that ship prices are going to remain high for some time. Something needs to give. Ship prices or freight earnings. At today's value, long term, there's a real problem ordering
It's
ships.
interesting, new building prices, certainly according to the Clarkson's data, have started to come off the top a little now.
Yes, I believe
certain
so.
sectors haven't, but as a basket.
And so we look then within the sectors, if I look at the container sector and then sectors within containers, and a lot of our vessels are operating in the feeder sector, for instance, which in recent years was, well, before the last couple of years was sort of immune from most of the big investment, obviously into the larger sizes, but we've obviously now seen that cascade down into smaller ships as well. And so I think the investment is everywhere. In many cases, whether it's a small regional trade or a large east-west trade, I think the economics don't stack up at the moment. As Wen Yu has said, I think being patient at the moment with a healthy balance sheet is a comfortable place to be.
So you don't think we're going to get to a more comfortable place where a higher value industry with higher priced assets, higher wages across the piece, and higher freight to pay for it all?
Well, I think the higher freight at the end there obviously comes back to demand and supply, doesn't it? If we have a lot of capacity on the water, we have modest trade growth expected over the next few years, and one way or another, those things don't gel. And so the focus for us, as a number of other panelists have said, is absolutely about short-term optimization for now.
Milena, you've had a very active fleet renewal replacement strategy the last few years. Any view of how that may be adapted, or what are the challenges you see with what you see in the market coming up in the next few years?
Well, actually, it's like somebody said it before. At some point, it will have to come for the dry bulk. And I think one of the things that we're not keeping in mind is the fact that the fleet is aging, and the fleets across the sectors are aging. And yes, in containers, it's much more over-ordered. But generally, as a rule, it's been thought in the past, at least historically, and we always need to look at historical data, that over 30% of order book is alarming. We're not even close to that. Of course, Capes, for example, are about 16, which is double what it was last year. But the slots are coming in 28, 29. You don't see any slots for 28 anymore. You have some bulkers coming in 28, and then whatever is being ordered will be new capacity ordered later. So when the vessels that were built and ordered between 2005 and 2008, that frenzy, they're very thirsty ladies. So when they're going to be around 20, 25 years old, they're going to be very heavy consuming. The new vessels and the new buildings that will be for the bulkers will be coming in and substituting. And depending where bunker prices are going to be, because we don't know. Within the day we saw last Friday how much they can change. They will slowly need to be, they will be irrelevant. And depending also on what progress will be having done in environmental regulations, we'll see how quickly or slower they will come out of the market.
Martin, going back to the big picture of the last, let's look back over the last 20 years. In many ways, the only reason I raise that is in many ways, these haven't been normal cycles. We had the greatest boom that the industry till that point had seen in most sectors. Then we had the best part of 10 years of debt repayment, of slack rates, where many companies went bust. Let's be honest. Some grew back. Then we've had this period of 6 years of black swans flying into the window virtually sort of every month, with some astonishing spikes and some cash windfalls for certain sectors that have been all-time record-breaking, unquestionably. And the industry itself has made more cash than any time. So when it comes to asset replacement, how do you sort of set a forward plan based on that sort of chaotic?
It's of course also it is difficult because rates actually the last 3 years have not really been justifying the asset value, so it has been a little bit difficult. But what we've done is we have taken 15 ships on long-term charter from Japan. That's normally what we do, and with purchase options, and we have ordered 10 new buildings, 4 Ultras and 4 Handys in China. And I think I agree with my colleagues here about the asset values. They are now, for second-hand, modern second-hand Handy and Ultra, they are the highest since 2008. They came up 20% from last year and so on. And I'm also getting worried when you have to order a ship and you get delivery in 2030. That just indicates the yards are, maybe they are dominating on the price setting. But on the other hand, I'm actually quite positive in the sense, as you were also saying, that 15% of the handysize and ultras are above 20 years. The order book is around 11%. Ships built 2009 to 12, those 4 years, the latest boom, they are 1/3 of the fleet. So in 2029, they will start become 20 years. In 2008, when we had the up and the bust, 70% of the dry cargo fleet was on order. Now we're talking 11%. So I'm actually quite optimistic around that part of it. Of course, I know the asset values or the new building prices are not driven by dry cargo orders. They're driven by the yards being filled with container ships and all these things. So I'm probably also in agreement that, and we've been sitting waiting for the asset values to come down. And of course they will come down, like anything else comes up and goes down. But reality in our business, you have to be there when the market comes. And sometimes, you pay a little bit extra maybe, but when the market comes, you have to be there with maximum.
You need to be ready
days.
to move
you have
when
to
the
have
market
the days,
is.
You have to have the ships available on that part. And we have today 108 ships that we own, and we have, with the purchase options, we have 25 more coming. So I think we are in a good spot, and we like the optionality. For us, optionality is key at the moment. Not, so you don't have to do it, but you do have the option to do it. So we can see all the disruption and all the challenges, and we do also think the world will change somewhat after what we see. But reality, when we step back and look at our markets, we are actually quite optimistic. We have a super balance sheet, and we had, of course, hoped, like I think the rest of us had hoped the market would come down and we could buy each other, and so on. That is probably not going to happen in that sense of it. I think for us, looking at our balance sheet, so also be careful not overdoing it. We know the markets are coming up and they will go down in it, and I think it's always supply that kills us. Demand goes up and down, but it's always the supply side. And when I look at it, even though I'm always worried, I think it's okay. I think it's okay.
Just, please. Julian, if you don't mind, can I add one more point?
Yeah, please.
I hear you mentioning about fleet replacement a few times. I would like to challenge the assumption that fleet needs to be replaced at least it is. I mean, if you look at what happened the last 20 years, or if you look at the last 6-7 years, COVID happened. And after COVID happened, we had probably the largest boom of perhaps every sector, right? So if we think about fleet replacement, we are, in my mind, basically assuming that demand for cargoes, the ton mile for cargoes, the routes are all going to stay the same, right? We are assuming that shipyards that have been building ships for the last many years will still stay the same. I doubt that. I suspect there's a lot going to be change in the whole demand equation of things. Supply, we're already seeing it, right? We are seeing traditional yards in perhaps Northern Asia are no longer that efficient to be able to build, and it's congregated around China. So I don't necessarily, in my mind, look at fleet replacement like one-for-like editors. I perhaps it's a bit more difficult, but perhaps look at where we think the flows would be and what kind of trades or ton mile that could happen that may determine perhaps the future fleet of what we want to do. Rather than, in my mind, take a somewhat easy assumptions. If I've got 100 ships, I will need to replace as they get to a certain age. I've just sort of raised the point because you mentioned about replacement a couple of times.
Which brings to mind, actually, what gets built must be scrapped. And I don't want to turn this into a scrapping debate, but I would just really like to pick your brains about how well you think the world is equipped to deal with the huge volume of scrapping that will be necessary in the next 5, 7, 8, 10 years. Do you think the world is ready to manage that that huge amount of tonnage which will need to be demolished?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a major event. Yeah. I mean, again, you're absolutely right, Julian. If you look at whichever segment, there are a lot of ships which have been built 15 years ago, or coming to 20 years or even more. So to some extent, that needs to go.
Yeah, most of the dark fleet would otherwise have been scrapped, for instance.
We hope so. Yeah, but seriously, I think there is going to be a major dislocation, and that if you bring in the element of decarbonization, oh wow, that's going to be a very interesting clash of very structural issues, and I think that will be a major impact on the whole freight system and everything.
Jeremy, is the world collectively ready to break the huge volume of ships? 50 million tons and going some probably each year for.
No, it's not. I agree. I think it's a major problem. We've got new regulation, of course, that's come along in the meantime, which is meaning some of the yards that are.
China is out of the game.
Exactly. So no big problem.
Yeah. Stamatis, have you looked at these issues in any detail at all?
Well, not really, because whenever we come to a point where we need to dispose of a ship, we have seen an efficient market in acquiring that ship. So we don't go all the way to the absolute end of the accounting useful life of the 25 years, because like Laurie said before and all the other charters, we know that Cape sizes and Newcastlemaxes pretty much get obsolete for mainstream owners like us when they reach 20 years old. So after that, we find an aftermarket where there are people, especially here in the Far East, that apparently make good use of our ships, and we don't have to deal with recycling them ourselves. So that's why
a legacy of not being able to recycle ships, particularly recycle them in an environmentally sustainable way, will have echoes and legacy for the industry in the round, not only commercially, but reputationally.
Indeed, but I want to go back to Milena's point and everybody else's, to say that, major charters that transport close to $1.5 billion of iron ore and coal every year, or even more than that, they say that they have been expanding the age of the ships that they have been extending, the age of the ships that they are taking in from 15 to 18 and sometimes 19. And I just need to remind everybody that the global fleet average age, especially on the Capes and Newcastlemaxes, is already close to 16 or more. So, we're pretty much to the point where there will be no ships. I mean, they will be extending every year that the ship is, the average age is getting older and older. So something needs to happen to that. And to your point, I think it's about 40% of the global Cape-size and Newcastlemax fleet that needs to be scrapped over the next 4 to 5 years, if we assume 20 years. I mean, it needs to get out of the conventional way of trading. So that's a huge amount of ships.
Milena, you're also a director of Helmepa in Greece, and you are very personally proud and engaged with the marine environment, protecting the marine environment. How do you feel about this, the risk of lack of scrapping capacity?
That's actually worried me quite a bit, and it's been something that I've been discussing. I don't see a good solution there. For bulkers, exactly because we haven't ordered that much, and there's going to be new projects like Simandu, which is the same ton miles as Brazil, China. I believe it's going to absorb a big part of our fleet, and even if it doesn't absorb when it absorbs the Capes, then it's going to have to split to the Panamaxes, so that it's going to draw up Panamaxes as well, Panamax, Kamsarmaxes. So I think for us, generally, the fundamentals are positive, but it does worry me very much. I'm not going to lie, and I think that the other sectors like containers, tankers will have an issue with that, because they're going to be the first ones, and they're more expensive also, so they're going to be the first to be absorbed by the scrap yards. Yeah, so I think I don't know how to answer that better, to be honest with you. The only thing that I focus now is, bulkers are not in immediate need of scrapping. We're going to be absorbed, so we're probably going to avoid a bad market for the next 5 years, in my eyes, and especially because Simandu has Chinese interests. It's definitely, and it has more ferrous content of iron ore, and it has the bauxite. It's definitely going to work. Now, how well, I think it's going to come slower. I think the volumes are going to come slower than expected, because they only have one railway.
Yes, indeed.
And they haven't even decided how they're going to use it, if it's going to be first comes, first serve, or how. So for bulkers, I'm positive. For the rest, I'm very worried about the scrapyards.
Martin, we talked a little about the disruption of decarbonisation, let's put it that way, earlier on, as one of the many factors that owners and operators need to be considering, just strategically. You recently tweaked some of your new building plans, which touches on those issues. Could you just talk about that briefly, what your thinking was and what the intention is and how you were setting yourself, and then what your longer-term approach to the question of decarbonisation is?
Yeah, so in 2024, we ordered 4 LEV, dual-fuel methanol Ultramaxes in Japan for delivery in 28. And of course, you know, betting a little bit on that IMO would rectify the regulation and there will be some global rules in respect to CO2 emissions on the ships. And of course, I was sitting looking at China and seeing the production of methanol, also green methanol in China. We thought that was a good strategic move for Pacific Basin going forward and would be a growth area for us going forward. We still believe that, actually. We sort of, but we also looked at it and with IMO in October not rectifying the rules and how the geopolitical situation is at the moment and so on, we sort of looked at it and say, this is too early. We will have these ships delivered in 28, and there will be probably many years before we can get the methanol for our ships. And reality also, not just because of shipping, but also because of data centers being built. The airlines need fuel. There's just so many things going on that we have to be realistic on our ships that it will take a long time. So we converted them to regular, normal fuel ships, and we now have an option to buy our LEV, same design, an option we have to declare next year, but then we only get delivery in 2030. So there has been a lot of writing, and it is not like we have given up on decarbonization at all. I think we are absolutely committed to that, and we've done all the investments we do in energy-saving devices and silicon paints and so on. And remember, we trade the small ships 85% of the time. We have cargo on board. We're not sailing in ballast. So we are totally committed to that, and also because it makes sense, also because the fuel prices are so high. But we just have to admit that the IMO will not rectify these rules, and I would be very surprised if they do it. I would be very positive. I would, of course, regret that we made the change, but I would be very positively surprised if they did, but I just don't see it happening. And maybe also for good reasons. So it will take some time before we see that happen.
Jeremy, is decarbonisation still on the boardroom agenda, or is it one of the footnotes, frankly?
Well, for me, it's relatively easy. A big part of our business is in the South Pacific. So if we were ever in doubt around decarbonisation, travelling into the South Pacific and seeing communities where we have ships calling, physically relocating to other parts of the South Pacific is always a pretty sobering reminder of what this is all about. It's also easy for me because between our shareholders who have no ambiguity in this issue, actually our customers in many cases as well have real conviction and want to know what we're doing, and frankly our staff. And so for us, no, things haven't changed. You then need to be pragmatic, of course, about everything that Martin has just mentioned.
That's the question, balancing the commercial realities with the ambition.
And those realities for us, of course, are the energy-saving devices that everyone's mentioned. We're particularly vested in the whole biofuel story at the moment. The SWI Group has some really interesting investments in biofuel production, and in Europe being involved in the aviation sector as well. It gives us a sort of a 360 view of biofuel, and we'd really like to do more work to challenge this notion of biofuel scarcity. And so I'm very encouraged to see all the work that's going on at the moment around the engineering impacts of biofuel and what we can all do more. Now, I think that's where kind of practicality meets this limbo-ness in terms of regulation at the moment.
Could I just say also that I think the investments in new ships, the fuel efficiency of a new ship compared to the old ones is enormous. And of course we invest in the energy-saving devices and all these things, but especially on, I'm sure also on big ships, but on small ships, there's just a limit how much you can do. So the dollar you spend on trying to reduce you know, we do on digitalization, we can do a lot on how we trade the ships, but physically, it's just difficult to change the 15-year-old ships. It will never be fuel efficient. And taking that money, investing in new ships, as we've done, those ships are, the fuel efficiency is just so much better than the old ship. And I think that is also part of the, you know, we should not shame ourselves just because we do the investment. The world will need it, and they will need those fuel efficient ships when they come. And then over time, hopefully we can do more and do more on biofuels and green fuels, and so I'm sure that will come as well.
Milena.
I completely agree with what Martin said, and one of the things that people forget about bulkers is that we carry the cheapest commodities, so there's no room, there's not enough margin there for people to pay up, especially in a high bunker environment. So yeah, we've also profiled all our vessels. We put ESDs on everything. We have a strong conviction, not only demonstrated by my board membership in El MEPA, but we've had an ESG report since 2018, and we've measured our emissions scope 3 for 2 years now. So we try to jump ahead, but as much as actually pragmatically possible. We cannot go and invest in alternative fuels when we are agnostic, and it's so expensive, and they won't pay up exactly because the margins are so low for bulkers. So for us, decarbonization remains on the agenda as a priority, but it's not the first priority, especially when you see urgent matters like vessels stuck in Ukraine 3 years ago, vessels stuck in the Straits of Hormuz, vessels going to Chinese ports and port fees being applied there, not knowing if you have to reroute or something. So when you have urgent matters taking over, decarbonization remains on the list, but you have the technology, you don't have the scalability of fuels, you don't have port infrastructures, and you don't have regulation. So we have to wait a little bit.
When you?
Yeah, I think decarbonization remains a priority. It has to be. But what I do notice that compared, say, 18 months ago, the conversation has changed. 18 months ago, it was more around pick a pathway and then move, you know. Now it's perhaps using Martin's word, or maybe even Vasila's words. Now it's perhaps more a little bit of a shift from conviction-driven decision, I call it, to an optionality-driven decision. You want that optionality. Because things are kind of unknown. And for me, I think committing to a single fuel pathway, perhaps it's not quite the right time. Yeah. But the other thing you mentioned about balance, Julian, I may be a little bit more conservative, maybe even a bit negative compared to perhaps some of, people in the audience. But when I look at decarbonization, it's not just about ambition or commitment. I think it's also a capital allocation challenge. So the balance that I would look at it is the balance between putting money for decarb versus buffering for potential market weakening. Because when market weakens, we have seen those times in the 80s and 90s, they can be quite dramatic. So to me, that's perhaps the balance that ship owners are thinking, how do you balance decarb versus having sufficient capital to buffer in the event that things get a little bit soft.
I'm afraid we're very nearly out of time, but so just a last sort of question to you all, just to wrap up a couple of our final points, and that is looking ahead over the next 5 to 10 years and turning this era of disruption and uncertainty and volatility to advantage. What can we do? Stamatis, could I start with you? Some owners do consistently seem to outperform, whether it's in the water, whether it's in luck. Who knows? I'm sure they wouldn't admit to luck. But where do you feel the real competitive edge lies today, and what does that say about building future strategy?
Well, in our minds, it's consistency. Nothing's going to change over the next 5, 10, 20 years as far as to the commodities or the raw materials that we transport. The world is not going to stop using iron ore, coal, bauxite to make steel and to create infrastructure. So we don't see that being replaced by robots or AI or anything like that in the next, not just 5 or 10, but even 20 or more years. So we don't see that happening. So you definitely need consistency to know how to play in the cycles, to know when to invest and when to stay back, to reduce your break-even rates. So it's all about that. I mean, if you have the financial buffer and you can play and squeeze the market when the opportunity is there, and to be defensive when it's not there, and not to go out of your way and try to become something that you're not. You know, we're shipping companies. You know, we're not going to invent the new iPhone or whatever. And the world does not expect us to be, you know, in the edge of financial engineering. You know, we just transport raw materials and certain commodities from point A to point B that help the world being fed or build houses and bridges and things that are going to be required for the expansion of the population over the next decades or centuries. That's what we do. It's as simple as that. So if you ask me what's going to happen in the next 5, 10 years, for us, it's going to be consistency. We're just going to remain good at what we do and deliver what is expected for us to be delivered by our clients, period.
Jeremy, consistency of execution?
Consistency, and as we just said, focusing on our customers. Right? The previous panel also talked quite rightly about these North Stars and safety. I think there are so many things at the moment that we talk about, we all agree we can't control, be it geopolitics or regulation. There are certain things we can control.
The weather.
And so in 5 to 10 years, I'd love to look back and think we're a safer industry. We haven't talked about various things today, like life on board the ship and welfare and the gender balance on board the vessels. They're all things that we can control, I think, now, and I'd love to see the positivity of that in 5 to 10 years.
Martin.
Yeah, I was also asked the same question yesterday, and my answer is that the investment in our people, it's investing in the talent, both those we have and those we need going forward, and it's both at sea and ashore, because reality is a ship is also a commodity, and of course we all talk about all the small things we do with them, but reality, that's also a commodity. That really makes the difference, at least in our company, is the people we have, both our 4,400 crew and our nearly 400 people ashore. And we can see the competition for the best people will be tougher going forward. And I do believe in digitalization and all kinds of other things, but it is about the people. So I hope in 5, 10 years we have invested enough in that part of it, so we have the right people to do it safely and do all the things. I get the timing right when we order, because the 30, 40 years experience, it will also go away one day.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
When you...
Yeah, I have 2 points to make. I think we are in an era where it's a very geopolitical structure of trade. So it's going to be volatile, it's going to be fragmented. And to me, one thing would stand out, which is trust. Because in a volatile and unpredictable environment, I think the brand trust makes a lot of matter. And the advantage is, perhaps using Samarthi's word, is to be consistent in times of disruption. The way on how you manage your ship's cargo care, how you manage your health and safety of your crew. Be consistent regardless of market condition, regardless of the trades that you are. Then you build brand trust. I think that's a big differentiating factor. The other point, Julian, is perhaps a topic we didn't discuss a lot today, which is around capability. I think traditionally, to me, the industry operates a lot on reference point and observable patterns. If I look at the last 10, 20 years, as we said, what have prices been? What is the break-even point? What is the OPEX to operate this ship most efficiently? But unfortunately, going forward, the signals are going to get a little bit more mixed. So we can't necessarily depend too much of observable patterns or historical trends per se. So to me, it goes back down to the strength of organization. So I see the industry moving from a model-driven kind of decision-making to a more judgment decision-making, which is really back down to capability and people.
Very interesting indeed, very interesting indeed. And Milena, can I give you the last word for this, your future vision?
I was actually keeping notes on everything that everyone was saying, because I find it very interesting. And I completely agree. In an ever-changing world, you need flexibility and adaptability. And that's the name of the game. It's come to stay for me. So you need operational efficiency. And what's operational efficiency? It's relying on your people. So you need, and relying on their expertise. And now that we have so many departments with EU ETS, with potential taxations, with environmental or other regulations, with legalities, you need a bigger legal team to understand and decipher sanctions, port fees, new regulations. So all of these things, you rely on your people, so you need their expertise, and it's important to have capable people to rely on. And operational efficiency also includes energy efficiency in a very unpredictable bunker environment, in an environment where environmental regulations will at some point come in, and they should come in. So whether you do it by conviction or because you're forced to, the end result will be that we will need to be much more energy efficient. So yeah, I mean, that, and you need a little bit of lady luck. It always favors
it does.
Who favors the brave?
One remembers the winners and forgets the people who were unlucky, of course. But that's partly the role that we fulfill. Milena, gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing your insights and perspectives of your experiences of many years. Fascinating. I hope the audience have found it equally interesting. And if you'd like to show your appreciation. Thanks. Pleasure. Martin, pleasure. And you? Jeremy. Please. And if I could just very briefly say a few words to finally wrap up. Could I thank through the day all the speakers and particularly the Leadership Spotlight speakers. Could I thank my colleague Craig for doing a great job in the double act, the two Ronnies of shipping presentation. Many thanks to all my TradeWinds colleagues here in TradeWinds events and DN Media Group events for the back office organization, running the front desk and planning of these events. Without them, we couldn't do it, of course. And of course, all the AV people. Our sponsors, as you heard Pranjal say at the outset, without getting some sponsorship in, we wouldn't be able to put on such events at such fantastic venues as this. So that's greatly appreciated. But if I could just finally wrap up by going back to where we started, that throughout all the chaos of these moments and frankly the money that's also being made, shipping does endure. And it's largely due to the people behind it, the crews, the people, the operators, the owners, and the wider ecosystem. And one of the defining elements of that is the resilience that the people and consequently the companies show. And as we were just hearing a moment ago, it's about not just passive endurance, but adaptation, building trust, building consistency. We also heard that the Pope is a Catholic, which, as well as other key industry insights earlier in the day. Those who are here will understand that, and I won't tell you until you've got a glass of wine in your hand, or a glass of Coke. Finally, could I thank all the delegates for your kind attention. I hope you found it interesting and stimulating as a day and thought-provoking. So with that, I'd like to wrap things up, and there will be a reception on the terrace. Thank you very much indeed.